Hello, and everyone. Welcome to another episode of the 13%. We are your
Hello,
hosts.
everyone.
Hello. We are your hosts, Cynthia McDonald and Richard Graves. We just want to thank everyone for actually joining us this evening. Before we get into tonight's topic, we just want to do a little housekeeping. Make sure that you like this video, subscribe to YFNA News, and also hit that bell so every time that we go live with our show and our sibling show in black and white and all the other great content that we're going to be coming up with in the near future, you will get notification that we are live. And good evening, Christian. Thank you for that greeting. So let's, I guess, did I get everything out the way? I think I got everything out the way, right? I think so.
I think you did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. And also, do also want to throw out a little carrot there, everyone. Make sure that you guys tune in next Monday at 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time. We're going to have a special guest on, Dr. Jared Ball, who will be speaking on his book, the Myth of Black Buying Power, the Propaganda, the Myth of Black Buying Power. And we're going to have a discussion about that. So I'm really looking forward to that. So make sure you guys tune in. All right. Richard, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, aside from being a little, what's the word for it? Starstruck. We'll have Dr. Jared Ball on. I watch his show all the time. So this will be the first time talking to somebody that I've watched quite a bit because I do enjoy his programming. So this ought to be interesting.
Yeah, I know. I watched a lot of his videos and programming. I'm looking really forward to getting into his book and really, just talking about a lot of the nuances. Also, if anyone is interested, like especially like when we're going to do this discussion next week, the book is available for free online. You can go to his website, imixwhatilike.org, and you can download the PDF version of the book for free so that you can go ahead and take a gander at it. So, and it's a pretty quick read. It's only like 116 pages long. So yeah, something that you can get done in a night if you are that, if you're that, what's the word I'm looking for? If you're that, help me out. Come on, Richard. You're the almost doctor. Help me with the language.
I don't know that one. I'm saying if you're that OCD about things, I guess. If you're a lot of people can read. If they're good readers, they can read through something 116 pages like nothing, especially for them.
Exactly.
I recommend the book, especially for students out there, political science students or students of sociology or economics or history, because it has very good information in it. I've cited it a couple conversations I've had with some of my fellow Republicans who like Thomas Sowell a lot. So they present certain arguments. So that was a book that I utilized to cite some statistics and some thoughts that are, counter to some of the things that Mr. Sowell believes or Dr. Sowell believes. So, it's a great read. Whether you agree 100% with the premise or not, you will enjoy it and you will learn something from it, I'm sure.
Most definitely. So, with that said, let's go ahead and get into the topic of tonight's show. Richard and I were actually talking after we did our last show about systemic and institutional racism. What is it? What are the costs? And, this is a topic that is so vast, so broad, that it definitely deserves more than one show. And, we both decided that we wanted to really break down, systemic racism in its context of like how it affects a lot of different portions of the institutions that we are dealing with in the United States. So tonight we're going to be discussing the political system, if that makes sense. Yes. So the political system. All right. So let's get into it. So Richard, why don't we first start off with like defining exactly what is systemic and institutional racism?
Okay. Well, Cynthia, did you want to define it? Because I like how you read, so or I can, you're always on point when you say things.
Sure. Reading is fundamental, Richard, as we all know. But a definition that we have for systemic and institutional racism, or more specifically, systemic and institutional white supremacy, is predicated on the socio political and cultural reality of the systems and institutions that were set up to serve American society, are predicated on the core idea of the superiority of whites, specifically white males, and by mutual implication, the idea of Black inferiority. The specific systemic and institutional racism towards Blacks in the United States is founded on the social and cultural view that whites were and are superior as a race to slaves and the descendants of them. There is no equivalent to that from Black people towards white people, and there cannot be one, simply because the systems and institutions that serve American society are formed with the presupposition of white superiority. And I
Absolutely.
like Yes, and I also like to give a shout out to pending Dr. Grace, who actually broke down that particular definition. Thank you. You want to you want to expound on that a little bit more?
Well, yeah, well, what it comes down to is I found early on in having discussions with white people about
Mhm,
race in American society, a lot of them try to, or they have a disconnected understanding. Um, they might feel that they have experienced individual racism, which they can. A person
mhm,
can be individually racist to anybody. There are black people that don't like white people, Mexican people who don't like black people, Chinese people who don't like white people. It goes around. People Racism in general is a term that describes being feeling superior or inferior to someone simply because of this idea of race that we have in Western society. So there were a lot of whites that couldn't understand, well, what's the difference. And I don't know. Well, some couldn't understand, some wouldn't understand. However, I think a lot of times people get caught up in, well, racism, I've had racism against me, and they don't understand we're talking about a very specific type of racism. We're talking about the actual foundations of this country. How the foundations of the country were established, and more importantly, how the institutions and systems to serve a society were established on the ideas of you and I being inferior just based on our color, based on being descendants of the African slaves, and how whites were superior. And this was something that continued from the colonial days through all the way up to the Civil War and beyond that. This is something that's been part of American society. So when someone says that slavery was over in 1865, they don't realize, or they may not be choosing to realize, that the systems and institutions that perpetuated slavery were still intact and still moving. And those issues weren't even to begun to be addressed until we get to, the civil rights movement, where we start looking at trying to equalize the board and give African Americans, which I don't even like the term civil rights. It was uh, basic human rights, or basic rights as American citizen, I guess. So it wasn't special rights. People tend to think we were getting special rights. No, it took 100 years after the Civil War for us to even be really made equal on paper. And then after
mm,
that, we still dealt with the cultural ramifications that continued to keep moving. And of course, those systems and institutions didn't really change. They still progressed with the presupposition of inferiority of blacks, superiority of whites. And a lot of
mhm,
whites don't wish to accept that because you got white people who are poor. You got white
mhm,
people who are struggling right now.
mhm,
Unfortunately, their struggles kind of coincide with the end of the civil rights movement as the economics in American society start to change, and those jobs that they had, those manufacturing jobs in the town that they had, where they dad worked and grandpa worked, etc. Those things started disappearing, and they started struggling. And of course, the Republican Party stepped in. By the way, my party, the Republican Party stepped in under Richard Nixon, and they
mhm,
began to point the finger at blacks and Latinos and whatever else was different and new, to Southern white base that they were trying to bring along as they were looking at the demographics and looking long term for what they want to accomplish with the Southern strategy. So
mhm,
It's a reality of the situation. And I think people need to understand that. I was having a conversation on one of Ethan's programs where a gentleman, I said systemic and institutional white supremacy. And he said, well, the government did this or the government did that. I'm like, that's just it's bigger than the government. The government is a tool that those systems and institutions utilize to forward their agenda. I mean, there's some systems and institutions that are part of the government, like the criminal justice system, the courts, corrections, police. But you have banking. Banking is private industry. You know, banking and finance is private industry. However, it is banking and finance is the system. The banks and insurance companies are the institutions, and they have their own systemic institutional racism against blacks that affected us. So it can be private systems and institutions or public ones, or public owned ones, private owned ones or public owned ones, because all of it does serve the greater society itself. So, like I said, it's just one of those things that people choose to either not understand or honestly don't understand. So that's why we're trying to break it down so people do understand what the difference is. And that's why I always get on people, don't just say racism and don't say things that I know that people like to say that black people can't be racist. We can be as racist as anybody else. What we cannot do is stop you from getting along. What we cannot do is take your community and run credit scores to determine what type of insurance you get that makes it uneven more expensive for poor black communities than it is for other people. We can't, we don't control the mechanisms of how society functions. So we can't bring that to bear to oppress someone. And I don't think that people understand that that is actually, people like using, people don't like the term oppression, or some people use it arbitrarily, act like we're not oppressed because we're not in chains like our ancestors. So I try to use different terms, but overall it creates uneven outcomes is what it ultimately creates. You know, so that's why we have a lot of problems we have racially in our countries, because those systems need to be looked at and we need to address them and have policy to try to even that out better.
Facts, facts. I did want to number one, I want to shout out the Be the Power team. They are in the chat. Shout out to Dr. Logic. Shout out to Naheem. Shout out to Mr. Ali Bay. Shout out to everybody who has joined us this evening. If you all don't get a chance to, please check out the Be the Power podcast. They usually come on Sundays and also on Thursdays. Sometimes Tuesdays. Just subscribe to their channel. These brothers are excellent. They do wonderful dissections of everything that you can think of. So just make sure that you guys, check out their podcast. They're absolutely wonderful. So just going back to the whole thing concerning like racism, and I kind of want to highlight a comment that I believe that Dr. Logic made. Institutional racism occurs within and between institutions. Institutional racism is discriminatory treatment, unfair policies, unequitable opportunities, and impacts based on race. Absolutely true. Also wanted to mention that, racism, especially when you're talking about systemic racism and institutional racism, it is about power. The whole reason that we have race, right, is because of constructing a power to make sure that a power system in order to make sure that you have a top tier and you have a bottom tier, right? And so you want to make sure that everything that is in place to make sure that that top tier stays on top is there, and all that's on the bottom is going to stay at the bottom. So when I think of like when you say that can Black people be racist, we can have prejudice, we can be biased, and I would definitely say that being biased is very much so a human thing, because we do have a tendency to group off, and we used to have a tendency to be kind of tribal in some of our actions in certain ways. But when we really think about race and racism, and especially institutional racism, this is about power. And since the institutions actually have been created to keep us at the bottom tier, I would push back a bit on saying that Black people can be racist per se. Prejudice, yes. Bias, yes. Even practice some racial animus, absolutely. But but because of the power struggle or having the lack of power in these particular systems, I would say no. But go ahead.
Cynthia, when you introduce the term power, you're creating a different definition. And one of the people that was commenting said words matter, and I'm going to say they absolutely matter. That's why it's
Sure.
important we understand
Sure.
racism, by definition, is to believe one is superior or inferior to someone else due to their race.
Sure.
Period. That is a definition. We can do that. I don't. This is one of the things that bothered me during the 70s and 80s, when this ridiculous idea of us not being able to be racist in that way was forwarded, because people were synchronizing the idea of systems and institutional racism with just garden variety racism. And the reason why I find it problematic that we continue to do that is because it makes the discussion not be able to go anywhere. You can't sit there and tell a person, a white person, that black people can't be racist. One who's been to prison, who has had to deal with the Nation of Islam or the Hebrew Israelites or the Five Percenters. You can't tell a person black people can't be racist if you hear Minister Farrakhan talking about Jews a certain way, or talking about white people as being devils created by Yaqub. You can't say that black people can't be racist when we use the same type of imagery, the same type of phraseology that white supremacists use. The Nation of Islam, when they come up with their theoretical concepts of where white people came from and them being devils and not human, that's racist. And to top it off, it is actually the mirror image of what white supremacists say about black people. So if a group of black people can dehumanize white people, and a group of white people dehumanizes black people using the same type of rhetorical tools, they're doing the exact same thing. That's racism. The only difference between the Nation of Islam and, let's say, the World Church of the Creator is, what can the Nation of Islam really do to most white people? Not much. But what can a group of white people do to a minority? Quite a bit. So that's the difference. You're right. The difference is the power dynamic and what you can do with that idea. When you have the belief, you have the belief. If I feel superior to you because of your race, that's a belief that I have. Now, what I can do about it, that's the difference between being black and white in America. As a black person, like I said, I don't control the systems to really do anything to white people as a group. Whites control the systems if they want to, and they have, do things specifically to us as a group, as a minority. So that's the difference. So people say words matter, they do. We've got to let go of these neoliberal definitions that we bought into, because it makes the conversation go nowhere. That is why whenever I'm talking to white people about racism, I specifically talk to them about systemic and institutional racism, the racism that's present in systems and institutions that are formulated to serve a society. That's important with this conversation we're having about the police. All right. Is every cop a racist? Absolutely not. It's not even about that. You know, this is a good example why it's important for us not to say racism in general black people can't do and only white people can do, because it distorts the conversation. When I'm talking to people about law enforcement and the systemic and institutional racism within the criminal justice system, if I have to be specific, because I'm going to get the media
Well,
pushback. I'm going to get the
one
media pushback.
one second, Richard. I would say just hold on to that topic, because, like, you know, we're talking about political systems right now.
Okay.
I will say though, I know I get what you're saying, and I guess that, you know, going back to what it says about words matter. You know, even when I'm referring to like racism, I definitely preface it specifically talking about systems, because systems is what will be the more consequential thing versus you not liking me because I'm black, or, you know, because of the color of my skin, or because my hair is nappy. You know what I'm saying? So because, like, you know, we can, because I know that we can kind of nitpick a lot of these different things, these particular portions apart, as far as, like, you know, what is racist, what is not racist. But, you know, but at the end of the day, what is more consequential to black people? Just a blanket term about racism, or what can be done when there's a certain dominating when there's a dominating society that actually determines policy when it comes to, like, how they are going to perpetuate said animus or bias or prejudice based on their systems, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So, yeah.
We're going with the political system. All right.
Okay.
That's one of those situations. All right.
Yes.
If I think I'm superior to white people, okay, let's just say I felt that way. I'm superior because I am of the original man of the earth, I'm the original man of the earth. I'm from Africa. Let's say I subscribe to whatever hotepery is popular that day, be
Oh,
it being a
scary.
Hebrew Israelite or a
Scary.
Yorubist or yeah,
Oh,
whichever one is popular, because people go through their phases,
sure.
right? And
Yeah,
I
they
say this
do.
as a former Hebrew Israelite member, listening to the X Clan, being all about the hotepery, so I know exactly what it is. So if anybody gets offended, I don't care. I've been there, done that. All right. So that being
Okay.
said, if I subscribed to that type of hotepery, which I did, upon which I thought I was superior to whites because I was the original chosen people of God in that
Mm,
worldview, all right,
mm,
that's racism. Now, but I don't control the Congress of the United States of America. I don't control the
mhm.
presidency. I don't control the Supreme Court. I don't control the military. I don't control. There's nothing I can do. I can't. Even if I felt I wanted to wipe out all white people, I really couldn't do it, no matter what. Now, if you take that same mentality I had when I was in the hotepery, and you give that to a white supremacist, if he's
Mhm.
smart enough, he can position himself to have a reality TV show and ultimately become president, and then he can do some things. So it all depends. Like I said, the individual can only do so much, but if you can get the power of the systems and institutions behind you, if you can get in that system, you can do a whole lot of damage. So, and
Sure.
we talked about the systems of government that exist.
Mhm.
Obviously, we talked about democracy, which is what we have a form of. We have a what's called a democratic republic or a constitutional democracy, basically. All right,
Mhm.
we have a representative government where we don't have direct democracy, and we talked about direct democracy. We have
Right.
where we vote for people that represent our interests, and they're supposed to do what we want them to do.
Mhm.
And of course, you have monarchies, which we don't have many of those left in the world at the moment. And I'm sure everyone knows how a monarchy works. You have a divine right of kings, a family of succession of heirs. So we know how that works. All right, and then you have um, we have outside of monarchies and democracies, we have totalitarianistic governments, which are run by dictators. This is what we saw in the former Soviet Union, and we still see in China. Um, Let me see, what else do we have? We have parliamentary systems like we have in Israel and the United Kingdom.
Right.
Um, the United Kingdom right now is a mixture of monarchy and democracy. It's a constitutional monarchy, I guess, where the monarch is a figurehead with
Right.
symbolic power, and then you have the prime minister, the House of Lords, and the House of Commons. Um, so that being said, so you have different forms of government. But sticking with the United States, we have our form of government. All right.
Right.
So the systems that form our government are not just or I should say, the institutions that that form the political system in the United States are not just the courts or the executive branch or the assemblies or legislative branches. It is also the party system that's very much part of our political system, and that would
Right.
be at this point, of course, the Democratic and Republican parties.
Mhm.
We do have third parties, but because of how the party system is set up, third parties are pretty much inconsequential, especially on a national level. At best, they can be spoilers in a game, but even that's starting to be less and less. We unfortunately, one of the problems with our with our primary system, and one of the problems with our with having these two basic parties running everything is they pretty much have rent seeked. They're private organizations, but they have
Mhm.
rent seeked themselves so well that they've become part of the functions of government. So there's, and that in itself is a problem. And that's something we discuss every time because even though it does affect us as Black people, it affects everybody, but it affects us as Black people specifically. But um, the the bigger issue with those two parties with African Americans is that this both of them, the Republican and the Democratic Party, both represent a degree or I should say, they both have a degree of systemic and institutional racism. I would say the same degree, it just manifests differently. So,
Mhm.
whereas the Democratic Party utilizes emotive hyperbole and people saying that they put hot sauce in their food to get us to vote for them,
Oh, child.
The Republican Party uses racial imagery to fearmonger white people, and to make white people, so they kind of pit people against each other. All right. But at the end of the day, um, you know, they do manifest racism in different ways. That's why I always tell people it's important for us as African Americans to vote for individuals, regardless of party, that we can hold accountable to get the policy outcomes that we want, whatever that may be. So, and I think that's important for all Americans. But, speaking to our community, we have a habit of voting Democratic. And unfortunately, in some places like Chicago, particularly, this is an example I use as close as one I see, it hasn't yielded us pretty good results over time, you know. So, and obviously people say, well, does that mean I need to vote Republican? No, I'm not saying you need to vote Republican. I need you, if at least we're going to vote Democrat, hold them accountable, because all they're giving you is a tap dance and a song and, playing your emotions and getting you to vote Democrat because the other guys are racist, but they're not doing anything for you. All the in Chicago, all the money's going toward white neighborhoods in the north side, and it's not going to the south side or the west side of Chicago, the black neighborhoods. The schools are not getting better. The job opportunities are not getting better. The infrastructure for travel is not getting better. People are more and more isolated in these communities, and this is the Democratic Party running the city. So again, you get what you ask for. If you ask for nothing, you're not going to get anything. You got to hold people's feet to the fire, regardless of what party they are.
Yeah, exactly. No, I totally agree with that. I mean, the thing about it is that one of the things that I would say, like the Republican Party has a tendency to gerrymander the vote away from Black people. And you have the Democratic Party that panders towards Black people and do absolutely nothing for them. So, it's kind of like a catch-22 situation, but I totally agree that we have to get out of this vote blue no matter who, or vote red no matter if you're dead. I don't know. I think that I just made that up, to be honest.
I don't know what rhyme they have.
I don't either. I don't know. I mean, like, I don't have bars like that, y'all. So sorry. But anywho, but regardless of that, we have to definitely be more of a people that practices, I like to say, group politics. I know that Dr. Claude Anderson came with Powernomics, I believe was his book. We need political Powernomics, and the thing about it is because we have to learn how to vote policy and agenda, not party. That is absolutely vital. And as you said, to really hold candidates and elected officials accountable to the votes that they are trying to garner from us, and I know that, like, in the future show, I really would love to dissect Biden's Lift Every Voice plan.
Can I say one thing? The fact that it's called Lift Every Voice, right there, that alone, it shows the emotional manipulation that the Democratic Party does of Black people. They give us a good spiritual hymn title, and that's going that's gonna make me run and go. Yeah, we don't care what's in it. It sounds good though. And I've had a few people cite that to me. Oh, Biden's lifted Black people. Oh, Biden's lifted every voice. I'm like, Lord. I'm like, okay.
Child, I cannot.
It's like, come on, man.
When I first saw it, I was just like, no. Who did this? Is this you, Simone? I know this is you, Simone. I want to find her. Who came up with it? And as I know, we even said it like on a previous show that when he was speaking with Charlemagne the God, he didn't even know because like Charlemagne the God tried to ask him the questions about it. He didn't even know what it was.
I was embarrassed for him when he was talking to Charlemagne the God. I was like, oh my God.
That's another show. But let's get back into these.
Let me be clear, people, let me be clear so there's no misunderstanding. I am a Republican. I've been a Republican since 1988, and I am going to vote for Joseph Biden for president. Why? Because, and we have disagreed on this, Cynthia, but I'm going to tell you this. As a Republican, I know my party and I know what's going on, and I'm going to tell you right now, it's not going to be good. So I believe Donald Trump is, in fact, a blatant white nationalist, white supremacist. All right. We know that we can say all of our presidents have been white nationalists or white supremacists to some degree, or at least racist to some degree. Okay. But this guy is the real deal. He's a white nationalist. And I don't think people understand that. This is bigger than Biden supported the three strikes rule, the Clinton-Klein bill, all that stuff, because the Black Congressional Caucus supported all that. And many black folks did too at the time when people was doing all them drive-bys in Los Angeles. But I'm going to say this. We can pick apart Biden for all the things that we don't like, but none of that is the existential threat that President Trump is. In another 4 years, that maniac is going to hurt all communities. And usually, like what do they say? If America sneezes, black people, if America has a cold, black people have cancer or whatever. Yeah, we're going to feel it worse.
They said that when black people catch, when America catches cold, black people catch the flu, which is absolutely true. I mean, we even see this. We saw that with COVID. That was, I think that was a blatant, example of how these systems are so ingrained in American society and how they pit themselves against Black America that we see like the disproportionate infections and also cases of people dying. And oftentimes it's because of not being able to have access to proper healthcare and clinics and hospitals and all the different things, all the social determinants of health that you actually need in order for you to be able to be a viable person in America. I mean, like, and unfortunately, even and I would definitely say, and trust me, people, I'm not a Trump supporter at all. I am not. I think that he's absolutely horrible. He's a horrible president, and he should have never been there in the first place. But I blame white people for him. So anyway,
well, now let's be clear. He got a larger percentage of the black vote than either McCain or Romney, and
that's true.
That's true. That is concerning.
But I will also say too. I mean, but even though he got a larger portion of the vote from Black people than what happened with Obama, Black folks still voted Democratic between like about 90%.
Oh yeah,
you know, when he ran. So I mean, we actually voted Democratic more than any group. You know, like we are pretty much a very loyal voting bloc, but you know, but I would definitely say that, you know, especially when we're talking about, you know, policy, I am not scared enough of Trump to just give my vote to Biden if he's not offering Black people anything. I'm not, you know, and I mean, and that's why, and I mean, at a good conscience, I can't give my vote to either of them. They're both horrible to me, you know, and even especially. Yeah, and I mean, like, and you know, I get what you're saying, and I totally understand that. I totally understand why people would, because like oftentimes when you go to the voting polls, it's not always voting for somebody; it's also voting against somebody, right?
Right.
So you know, so like you have to be very conscious of that. But you know, I'm mostly just doing down ballot. You know, like I'm voting for initiatives and I'm voting for other candidates who align with, you know, policies that I want to see better for my people. But Joe, if you're listening, you got this July, right?
Mm-hmm.
In July, between July to November to get it together. I'll be watching. Change my mind.
Well, I have, as a historian, you know, I forecast from time to time. I get a bad feeling that this man is going to win again, because unfortunately, I don't think Biden. Unfortunately, the Democratic Party remains a Democratic Party. There's a reason why I'm not a Democrat, and let me be clear: I don't vote party line. I don't vote party line. I vote for candidates. I voted for Obama. I voted for Obama twice. I voted for Hillary. All right, because I saw which way this ship was going. Hillary, you know, when Trump was running against her, I told Republicans, all right, there were a lot of Republicans that ended up voting for Hillary. Your Secretary Powell, one of your people, you know.
Sure.
But
that's an inside joke, y'all.
When I got concerned because the Democrats that I were talking to were, I'm not voting for Hillary. I'm like, are you serious? I said, did you hear anything that came out of this man's mouth for the last year and a half? You know, once President Trump started, when he was candidate Trump, when he started that whole birther thing with Obama, I saw the white nationalism right there. I'm like, this guy is, and I thought he was a joke. I didn't expect him to win a nomination, but he tapped into that latent underlying white supremacist mentality, that neo-Confederate mentality, and he was able to deliver. You know, and then of course, like I said, even though most African Americans still voted Democrat, surprisingly, a larger number voted for him than voted for any other Republican candidate in the last, 20 years or so. So that was concerning to me. It made me look at some trends within the African American community, see where that was coming from. And I told you, I realized a lot of that is Black evangelical Christians who are starting to align more with white evangelical Christians. So that should be disturbing. It disturbs me. But in any case, the things you bring up, you're right. The fact is, here we go into another election. This is government. Now, honestly speaking, most people, the government that affects you most is government closest to you. All right.
Right.
I'm appealing to all of you who may not want to vote for Biden as a Republican to vote for Biden so Trump does not win. Because with Trump is going to come a lot more economic problems in the long term for all working people, no matter what color you are. All right. He's already created a problem for working people, no matter what color you are, by a lot of things that have gone through the Supreme Court, a lot of things that have cases that came before it. Ask Me v. Janice, that alone set back working people, not just unions, but working people in our position to be able to collectively bargain or to collectively even sue in some cases. So these things are in concert. So there is an attack against working class people, regardless of color, because rich people don't care. All right, people who control the wealth don't care if you're being black or white. They like utilizing that to keep working class people from taking a minute to talk to each other. But so I'm obviously very pro labor. So I'm trying to tell people this is bigger, and I know people are gonna get mad that I say this. All right, as they say, New Jack City is bigger than Nino Brown. Mr. Kareem Akbar, the brother from the bank, this is bigger than the black agenda. What is happening is bigger than the black agenda. I'm sorry to tell y'all. I'm sorry to tell y'all. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. Why it's bigger than the black? Let me explain. It's bigger than the black agenda.
I'll let you get
because any negative that he gets is going to hurt us more than almost any other group in the country. Any of the negatives that Trump presents, and it's going to hurt us very hard because he presents three possibilities that we should all be terrified of. Dealing with undermining working class people, period. That hurts us more than it hurts any other group. And bringing us to a global war, which is quite possible, regardless of what people think. There's a reason why all those generals don't like him. All right. There's a reason why. This man literally, all right, says that, yeah, I knew Russians put a hit on American soldiers. However, I didn't really read the brief. So he didn't care if it was happening. This man has sold us out on so many levels. It's treasonous, regardless if they can impeach him or not. But the fact is, if we go to war, we disproportionately are in the military. We're going to disproportionately die in wars. All right. It's just that simple. All right. Any negative he presents disproportionately affects us more because we are disproportionately affected by those things already. It's just going to amplify that. We're disproportionately affected by poverty in this country. We're disproportionately affected in the criminal justice system in this country. We got more people going to prison. All these things have an intersection. All right, the disproportion in our education, all those things have an intersection. And all I'm saying is, whereas Biden will come in and at the very least maintain a basic status quo for us to regroup and actually figure out what the hell we want to do, and at least not bother our local governments as we press Mayor Lightfoot or if we press Governor Pritzker. It's not going to bother that process of our local politics, whereas Trump is interrupting even our local politics. Trump's decisions help cause us as Black people to have more COVID deaths. Two things help us have more COVID deaths. And I'm going to rant for about 2 minutes. I'm going to leave it alone. One,
I'm counting.
Again, my favorite, the Hotepery. which was all on social media when this broke out, talking about we were immune to it, like black people are from Krypton or something. All right, I remember all the Hotepi rappers, you know, the deeps, pseudo deeps. You know, I'm not gonna mention their names. So some of them I'm cool with, but you know, oh yeah, we ain't gonna get it. Okay, that caused a bit of um, let's just say false comfort, false safety that we had in our mind. And then the policies of President Trump, because he did not get ahead of this and he ended up leaving it to governors and mayors to handle this without the resources to do so, which disproportionately affected who worse? Us, because we the ones ended up dying. Black people were the ones in the suffering because we're in those low income jobs. We're the ones stuck on public transportation with a bus load of people or an L train full of people. If this had been handled properly on the executive level of the presidency, if he had at least rolled out a plan for the country to follow, we would have had less repercussions from it. But because he don't care, we black people suffer more. Black people disproportionately dying higher because of his lack of policy and him throwing it on our local government. Like I said, politics is local. We're dealing with Mayor Lightford. We're dealing with Governor Pritzker. We can get some things done in our state. We can get some things done for the city of Chicago or for the
Sure.
outlying suburbs or for Peoria or for down in East St. Louis. Or, you know, I'm speaking as the black community in all these different places we live and congregate. But if you got a president like Trump in office, that throws a monkey wrench in all that because now they got to fight with his dude. Pritzker's got to fight with him. Lightford's got to fight with him, and it creates an imbalance that president or the national level politics begins to affect us in an extreme negative way. I don't think we get that with Biden. And that's when I know we don't get that with Biden because that's not what we normally get with Democratic presidents. But we do get it with people like Trump. And if we allow him to get elected again, like I said, we're going to feel that pain. We're already feeling disproportionately because of how we're set up in this country, but it's going to multiply. And I'm just saying it's not a good thing.
Again, I hear what you're saying, but one of the things that that we as Black people have always have felt since we've been here is that disproportionate feeling of all the negatives that happen to our group. Always, no matter if it's a Democrat in office or a Republican in office. I mean, we can even discuss how Black people actually lost wealth under Obama. Especially when he really didn't go after the banks and also and predatory lending in the fullest capacity that he could have gone after them, especially after the housing crash in 2008. So the thing about it is that, again, if we get to the point that we are so concerned about, oh, Trump gonna do this, oh, Trump gonna do that, we're still going to be stuck in the same cycle as not getting any policies that's going to affect, that does transformative, effective change in our communities. We're just not going to get it. I mean, to me, if Trump actually wins in 2020, in November, and we have another 4 years of him, either him actually surviving for another 4 years or having a heart attack. I mean, he's been eating a whole lot of cheeseburgers last time I've heard. To me, that would be more of a time for us to regroup and also to really hammer down to the Democrats, like, listen, the reason why you all lost in 2016 and the reason why you are losing again is because you do not speak to the demands that we have as a voting bloc. Black voters have always been the outlier when it comes to elections. And one of the reasons why Obama won in 2008 and also in 2012 is because we came out in record numbers. We were telling our people to vote. We were telling them, and a lot of us were more concerned about, because he's Black and a change you can believe in, that we weren't really paying attention to policy with him. We were just happy to get a Black man in office. I mean, hell, I'll be the first one to tell you, but when we saw Obama being elected, when we saw like all the electoral numbers come in, when I was with, at that particular time, I remember all my family was in the living room and we watching television and we see that they declared him next president. all of us broke out and cried. He was like, oh my goodness, it was a black man. Oh my Jesus, we arrived. No, we didn't. And the thing about it is that we're going to constantly get into this particular cycle, no matter really who's in office, about well, we're just gonna, just give, like a chicken bone to black people, and they're gonna come out and vote for us because they're a captured voting a voter block. That's what they are. And we're usually more so like, scared of Trump. And I'm not disagreeing with you saying that he is horrible. Yes, he is. He is absolutely horrible. And but at the same time, even when you were talking about like the carceral state, when it comes to disproportionate Black people, especially Black men, being locked up in prison and things of that nature. I mean, a lot of that had to do with Biden and also his particular dealings with racist senators, during his tenure, for the time that he's been in there in the 70s. I mean, like, he worked with Strom Thurmond, he worked with a lot of these different people. So, and he even boasted that every tough on crime bill had my name on it. That's what he said. So, I mean, we really have to be very much so scrutinous of any candidate that comes in front of us and says, I want your vote. And it has to be to the point, like, and as we know this, and I've seen a whole bunch of people inside the chat say this: voting is an exchange. It is not a gift. And that's why I'm saying, Biden, if you really want the office, you got him between now and November to holler at Black people. And you know what I'm saying? You better give us something that we can work with, because right now you ain't giving us nothing. And if you really want to know what we're trying to work with, go to ados101.com. It is up there 24/7 for you to see a Black agenda.
We'll see if he'll do that. I don't expect that to happen this time around the block. But what I do expect,
you gotta push for stuff. Or
I'm saying I'm glad I understand with what you guys are pushing for. Mm-hmm. All right. I think I've come to an understanding of it to the degree that as we formulate what exactly that is going to be that we're asking for, that's a process I want to be part of. I don't think anything that we brand towards us actually works in our favor because of the history and the racism, the systemic and institutional issues we talk about, and the cultural ones. For example, with our Black Lives Matter movement, the pushback we get most of the time is because it's called Black Lives Matter. Right? Yeah, I'm not a member of the organization, but I do support the idea that Black Lives Matter. So, I'm always going to say that. But you got white people right now that the majority of white people think BET is racist because it's called Black Entertainment Television. Yeah, not taking into account the actuality that the only reason why there was a BET is because MTV refused to play Black videos. So they never look at how we got to having a BET. Like they don't look at how we got to having a Black Lives Matter movement. It's not like one day we just woke up and said Black Lives Matter. There was a series of events historically that happened that got us to the point of saying, look, damn it, we matter too. We should be treated equal too. We shouldn't get shot dead too. We shouldn't get shot dead. White people get to shoot up a church and get a cheeseburger. We walking down the street with a pocket knife, we get shot 13, 14 times. So so to us, it's obvious, it's self-evident. But again, you have to understand they're looking through it through a whole different cultural lens. And that is why when we talk about the other issue, I won't bring up because I eat up the conversation. I don't think they will quite understand. We're going to have a conversation about that.
We are.
But back to Biden, I hear what you're saying, and I understand your perspective. So I'm not a Democrat. I'm a Republican. So I'm always wanting a Republican to vote for. I just haven't been given any good options the last 16 years or so for president. So
I hear you.
Once they nominate this dude, I'm like, heck, I have no choice but to vote for whoever makes this dude lose, because I have to see some transformative change within my party, and that dude gets to go for that to even happen. But more importantly, I do have some concerns. Like I said, I do have some concerns about how this guy rolls and what he's on the geopolitical scale that actually concerns me. Because again, the bad part about being a historian is actually, knowing history and looking back at World War II or looking back at World War I and looking at the amount of death that happens in a world war and how that affects the world. So I'm like, man, this dude gonna get us in something. He gonna write us a check that we ain't really trying to cash, right? And so that's one of my biggest concerns with the guy. But I do respect the fact that people on the left, you're making demands from this guy because he is supposed to represent your interests. He's asking for your votes. You know, he's coming to the black community, asking black community votes, and I would hope the black community holds him accountable and makes those demands, and hopefully that comes out to some policy that's helpful on the federal level for African Americans. But you brought up the thing with him and the crime bill, and this is one of the things that I never understood of it. Maybe you can explain this to me. All of that stuff about Biden being, you know, how he voted, you know, supporting the crime bill, even when they attacked Hillary with Bill Clinton's crime bill, when they attacked him with that, when they attacked her with that, I was like, okay, y'all do know that's coming from us, that's coming from the right, and that is a way to try to undermine your candidates. And I'm like, you guys are falling for this. I mean, y'all didn't start that. That came from the right in order to try to tank your candidate. And then y'all took what the Republicans put out there and you ran with it. I'm like, what the hell? I couldn't even believe I said, the Democrats fell for that shit? Pardon my language. Y'all fell for it? I'm like, how did you fall for that? This clearly came from the Trump campaign. And they clearly put it out there. Steve Bannon is a genius. And the Republicans, the Democrats ran with it. I'm like, the crime bill? I'm like, don't get me wrong. And from a sociological aspect, I do understand the negative impact it had regarding incarceration rates. However, you know me, I'm still Republican. All right.
Sure.
My thing is, unless Joe Biden was out there in South Central Los Angeles helping them brothers and Crips and Bloods do them drive-bys, he ain't responsible for them going to prison.
Well,
and then now hear what I'm saying. Hear me out. Hear me out.
Okay, so
hear me out.
Okay.
You realize you remember you remember the 1990s. You remember how bad it was getting in the West Coast, all right? And it was moving across the country. That violence and crime was moving across the country. Black communities were clamoring for this change. The Black Congressional Caucus unanimously supported Bill Clinton's crime bill. All right. So again, what I have problematic, maybe you can explain this to me, is why African Americans on the left tend to make crime issues congruent with Black issues. Because in all due actuality, in all due actuality, what I mean to the degree that they do, in all due actuality, even though the majority of prisoners in state prison are Black, all right, that is a minority within the Black population. They're not most of us. So, and I'm not saying we're not supposed to care, we're not supposed to do anything about it, we are. But the things that I hear being asked for on the left, all right, is that here's what I'm hearing being asked for. I'm hearing that we're asking for lower incarceration rates, right? All right. But we're asking for things like, okay, we don't need to be over policed, which doesn't make sense when you have, 115 shootings in 2 days. Obviously, the police ain't all over the place. So I guess what I'm saying is, we're blaming. Well, let me. I just want to get the thought out. I'm sorry, but
I'm about to say, I'm trying to follow you, fam. I'm trying to follow you.
Let me bring it back to.
Okay.
We want to blame this crime bill for this heightened number of people going to prison. At what point do we accept the fact that no matter what? Let me put it this way: how many brothers do you think are in jail? How many brothers do you think are in jail? All right. For breaking a law that they didn't know was illegal when they did it.
I don't know, but
okay.
I will.
No, I'm just saying. I'm not saying what you know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, well, I will say this. I mean, and I think that, a lot of us, and I think that we kind of we touched on this on another show.
Hold on one quick second. Yeah. Brother Mike asked a ridiculous hotepery question. Let me put this out there. Bro, man, this ain't that. I'm not the one. All right. This ain't no, let me be clear. Brother, man, this ain't that. I'm not the one. We not the two. I'm not the one. So you might want to bring that down, because this ain't that. Just because I may disagree with some of your presuppositions, don't question my Blackness. I won't question yours. And we can leave it at that. We can disagree as Black men, and I'll respect that. Don't come to me sideways with that hotepery BS, man. I'm not that brother, dude.
I don't know.
All
What
right,
was the
go ahead.
question?
No, don't worry about it. All right,
Okay.
go ahead.
So one of the things that we discussed on a previous show, I mean, and let's just look at data concerning incarceration rates. You have over 40% of the population in the United States, as far as like incarceration, is Black men. They're only 6% of they're only 6% of the population.
Agree.
And also too, like if you one day, maybe we should do this one day, really look at the crime bill, like really, like let's really like look at the crime bill and some of the things that actually were espoused in the crime bill. And I understand, like historically, a lot of the cities, like Los Angeles, were dealing with um, you know drive-bys, gang activity, things of that nature. But even we discussed that oftentimes, and especially when we talked about the coroners, remember when we were talking about the coroners and how much the coroners actually make?
Absolutely.
A lot of these particular underground economies flourish in poverty. And since these underground economies flourish in poverty, and we also understand that who's disproportionately affected by poverty, it is us. Then we have to what the crime bill did not address is the socioeconomic issues that we deal with as Black Americans, specifically those who descend from chattel slavery, because that's over 90% of us. And since we actually have a lot of these particular things that are pitted against us, the only thing that we did was we threw money at private state prisons, states, so that they can actually, build prisons. And then we, of course, now we have a private prison institution. We incentivize and also came up with other policies, on the local level, like Michael Bloomberg did with Stop, Ask, and Frisk, which brought more, especially targeted Black men who were put in particular databases, even though they didn't get a chance to actually that they didn't even commit crimes. They just fit a profile, right? And also and so, like, if something happened or they fit a profile and if their name is inside the database already, then more than likely they're about to get shipped to the police. They're going to be shipped to jail. And we see these, and the problem is that these particular instances were happening more so because of policy. These are policies that's coming from the top down. So like oftentimes, and yes, and here's the thing, and one of the things that we did not get into, and we only have about 2 minutes left, is this whole thing about dog whistle politics, and which the right has been known to do.
So they're very good at it.
Yeah, they're very good at dog whistle politics, and and which is a wonderful example of systemic racism in the
Well, let
institution.
me say something, Cynthia, real quick. I agree with what you're saying. The crime bill did not deal with the underlying problem, nor was it intended to. Nor that's the thing with policy. What people were looking for was here's the thing. You had a problem. Crime was going up. That was reality. All right. In Black communities was going up. You had a problem. People wanted a solution. And unfortunately, politicians don't think long term. They think reactionary. So they reacted and it caused a negative effect. Without question, I'm saying the crime bill did create a negative effect. But you and I talked about the underlying socioeconomic policy, which is still, we can complain about the crime bill, but if we don't sit here as African Americans and come up with better policy, socioeconomic policy, in order to create a system that lessens that amount of how that poverty is disproportionately affecting African Americans, you're going to still get people going to prison. They're still going to, here's the deal. I don't understand why people look to the criminal justice system to fix this particular problem, because it cannot.
No, you can't. You can't.
So any reform we do in the criminal justice system really isn't going to slow down the number. I remember I told you one time, there's 3 things that slow down people going from prison. 1, the people who come. The only thing that changes that is a combination of economics, education, that type of policy that gives people an opportunity to make better choices. 2, not letting people come back to prison by creating the programs that while they're in there, in order for them to go out and go on parole and get a job and actually function and not go back to old habits. That's the only thing inside the prison. The only thing can happen is we can get the money to do programs to train people as carpenters, electricians, um, chefs, barbers, whatever, in order for them to, be functional society so that they can have income and create wealth and not be stuck in a cycle. The other thing is the policy of the whole thing with sentencing. That's the biggest problem in the criminal justice system. If a person goes to jail for 60 years, that's it. That's pretty much you 20 years old, you go there 60 years, it's pretty much your life. So they're
Sure.
giving these young brothers 60 years, 70 years, 80 years. They are really, really, so those three things I would say, if we're looking to change something, those are three things that need to change. But the one thing, the biggest thing, it doesn't matter what we do in the criminal justice system. If we don't change the social economics, if we don't change the education in these affected communities, all right? If we don't change those things for the positive, then you're going to keep having a flow of people coming to prison because you're going to keep limiting their options. So, I feel like it's an exercise of futility to talk about a crime bill or to talk about prison reform or to talk about criminal justice reform if we don't reform what is pushing people in the door of a prison. Because like I said, those people in prison, most of the time, there's some innocent people in there. Most of the time, they're in there for something they knew was illegal when they did in the first place. So we have to create a situation where there's better choices so I don't choose to do that thing. And we all talking, I'm not judging nobody. Hell, if I had known the brothers was making $20,000 a day on the corner in the west side of Chicago over Cape Town, I probably would have been standing there with the brothers too, making that money. I just didn't
Sure.
know. All right. I found out later how much money was running through the hands. So trust me, I know it's hard to walk away from $1,500 a week doing what you do. All right. You ain't making them when you 13 years old, making $1,500 a week. That's hard to walk away from. So I understand that. That's
Sure.
why it's so important that we get to those foundational issues before this starts to happen so that they don't end up in prison with us. I don't want to see the brothers coming in.
Of
I want
course
to see
not.
brothers going out, not coming back also. So those are things that I think we need to work on. But I'm gonna
Yeah,
stop. I know we're getting
we
close.
yeah, well, so yeah. No, yeah, what you're basically saying is that we need a socio-economic transformative policy from the top down, from the ground up. That is reparations for the American descendants of slavery in the form of cash payments and set asides. Please, again, if you need more information, go to ADOS101.com. Shout out to Dr. Darity, Yvette Carnell, and Antonio Moore for bringing the conversation to the national forefront. Hiya! Okay,
Well, you and
so
I are
here's
going
the
to have
thing.
we're going to
We
have
are
that conversation about
we're gonna have that
reparations.
conversation.
Someone
Yeah, we
asked
are.
about full
We are.
reparations. Someone asked on full reparations. And I'm gonna say
Yeah.
honestly, at this time, I'm always for whatever is best for Black people. Period. All right. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not gonna go against
Mm-hmm.
anything. If you show me, hey man, this is gonna work, this is how it's gonna be, I'll be right there with you. All right. Right now, I'll be
Mm-hmm.
honest with you. From what has been presented to me about reparations, which has been something very different than you and I have talked about. Unfortunately,
Sure.
I've come across the ADOS community in different conversations, and everything they've said to me regarding reparations to me has been utterly ridiculous and fantastical. The only time I've ever had a reasonable discussion about it is when you've talked to me about it. And
Mm.
I understand with all movements, you have
That's
a breath,
because I
right?
am that's because I am a reasonable, logical, intelligent person.
Well, with anything, as long as there
That's
can be
why.
a conversation, as long as there can be a conversation, we'll see. We're going to talk about that in, like I said, one of the shows. We're going to talk about reparations. But I will say this,
Most
regardless of how I feel,
definitely.
how I feel about reparations, this is the one thing that I think a lot of African Americans, our people, don't like to talk about. There also needs to be a significant change in culture with us, because the old saying, you can give me $1 million right now. My spirit ain't right, my mind ain't right. And I don't say that in a religious sense. I say that as the overall in the essence sense. My spirit and my mind ain't right, then I'm gonna give it right back to the people who gave it to me. Because if I give reparations to every African American, all right, if our mind ain't
Well,
right,
not everyone.
it's going right back for the most part into the hands of multinational corporations that are run
Well,
by not Black people.
that's why, and that's why I would say, and yes, I definitely would recommend this book. Matter of fact, Richard, I think that what we should do is we should read Dr. Darity's book From Here to Equality. and then have that conversation about reparations. Matter of fact, if Dr. Darity, if you listen and holler at me, I would love to have you on the show. But
You keep
the thing
bringing all
about
these
it,
high speed PhDs on here with me, cuz. Yeah, I'm like, dang, cuz.
I mean,
You didn't let me know I was gonna be on the big
listen,
game.
because Richard, if you know what, Richard, to be honest with you, if I know anything about you, is that you're going to, if we're going to have highbrow discussions about stuff like this, you're going to want an academic in that field. You know, someone who really know what the hell they talking about. So, yeah. So, Dr. Darity, holler at me. I might
Well,
holler
I'm gonna
at you
look up
very
his
soon.
book.
Into
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah.
get the
Yeah.
book.
Yeah, you definitely get that book, because like one of the things that Dr. Darity did in that particular book is that he really laid out exactly what reparations should look like, how it's going to be distributed, who's supposed to get it, and and really what it's going to accomplish. And and anytime that people would say something to the effect about culture in this particular aspect, let's just keep it a buck.
Mm-hmm.
You gonna have folk that get, if like, say for instance, first off, reparations is not just cash. Okay, let me be
Right.
clear. It's not just cash. It is
Okay.
cash, and also it's also set asides. And set asides are going to be a plethora of things to actually help change the face of Black America. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, so we can, and like I said, you want to see what that look like, go to ADOS101.com. All right. Anywho, so but on the same side is that even when somebody gets cash, you're gonna have some people that trick it off. Of course, that's going to happen. But there's
Statistically,
also
most, you know that.
that's
Statistically,
gonna.
most.
I mean, like but that's the thing. Like, how many times have we read about people inheriting millions of dollars, and then next thing you know, they broke because they
Yeah.
they tricked it off. I mean, that happens. I mean, but regardless if that person tricks it off or not, that's not necessarily going to stop somebody from being able to. That should not be a caveat to say that you're not going to
Well,
get it
no,
because I'm
that's
afraid
not
that
a
you're going to.
caveat to say.
Well,
That's not
no,
a caveat to say.
I'm not
Yeah.
saying that's what you're saying. I'm just saying that, oftentimes that is an argument. Oh, people ain't gonna know what to do with their money, therefore we should not pay reparations. And
No,
I
I
said,
think
how
that.
sway? And
Yeah, I think that
so
expands. I think that
so
expands the discussion,
but
though.
but
Of what that looks like.
yeah, no, yeah, exactly. That definitely is going to expand the discussion. And and also too, but there's going to be a large conglomerate of us that happen to be descendants of chattel slavery that's gonna know what the fuck to do with their money. Okay. I.e. me. I got a whole
So,
list of
so you're
exactly what
gonna.
I would do.
So I'm gonna
Go
throw
ahead.
a caveat here. What about our? So do I'm gonna mess with you now. Do
You always mess.
Dominicans,
Go ahead.
Jamaicans, Haitians who are here third generation, do they get reparations too?
No.
Okay. How about white people who have 10% African ancestry from African slaves? Do they get 10%?
No.
What if they identify as black? What if they have identified as black their whole lives?
The
And
criteria. Okay, so and this is another reason why I say read the book,
yeah, 'cause I
because
want to know what
Dr.
criteria is.
Because Dr. Darity does actually he does lay out the who gets it.
Mhm.
So if you are able to, one, trace your lineage through a chattel slavery through America, which
Mhm.
I've done it in an afternoon through at least
Yeah.
one parent, and I did it in one afternoon.
Mhm.
That's one criteria. And the second criteria is that you had to at least declare Black and or African American on, a document, as far as like, the census
Okay.
is concerned.
That makes sense.
So, yeah, so that's
That
gonna,
makes sense. So we can't have
yeah,
nobody slipping in 10
yeah,
minutes
so
later talking about, hold up, I
right,
got
like the
10%.
$5
I
Indian
want
thing. No, none of that. None of that. Okay. So we
All right.
ain't gonna do no DOS rolls. We ain't gonna do $5 Indian. We ain't gonna
All
do I got my 23andMe back. No, none of that. So
All right. So
but
Cynthia, I'm be honest with you. I'm be honest with you straight up. I'm gonna read Dr. Darity's book because I am an
yes.
academic, and
Mhm.
that's one of my things I don't like doing. Like I said, the people I talk to about ADOS are they're talking about reparations. We're talking about some ridiculous
Uh-oh.
stuff. Nothing like you and I were talking about. So it's important for me to you read Dr. Darity's book and kind of
Oh,
get into it. Can you, because you kind of frozen there. Can you see me? Okay. Yeah. So I'm glad that you
Yeah, I
brought
can
it
see
up.
both of us
Yeah.
froze for a minute.
Okay. I'm
Yeah.
going to get
Well, we're
Dr.
back.
Derrida's book.
Yeah.
You know, I've read some of his papers,
Mm-hmm.
and he's a bright dude. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily agree with all his politics, but I don't
Mm-hmm.
agree with anyone 100% to learn something from him. You know, which is the last thing
Mm-hmm.
I know I kind of got hot on that comment. I just get so tired of Black people that we cannot talk to each other if I'm a Christian, you're a Muslim. If I'm a Republican, you're a Democrat. If I'm from the Midwest, you from, New York. You know what I'm saying? He a blood, he a Crip, he a Vice Lord, he a GD. Bottom line, all that bull junk got to go to the side. At some point, we have to be able to have conversations with each other in order to try to do what's best for us as a community, regardless of our differences. It's one thing we can have differences. Now, of course, we got people that are just, what's the word for it, antagonistic or anti our community that have our color, like a Candace Owens or I'm not going to mention any more names, so I don't want to get people in trouble. You'll have one on the show next week if I mention too many names. Do me a favor, just don't get Cornel West on here, because I ain't ready for that. Okay, I'm not ready for that.
Oh,
All
no,
right,
not Cornell.
I'm not
Oh,
ready
no,
for
not
that.
Cornell.
All right, I will have Rick or Ethan
Ah.
fill in for me. Rick or Ethan will fill in for me, because Cornel West is so damn smart. If he could debate something that is absolutely wrong, and he'd still make me convinced at the end of the conversation. So I don't even want to have that. I'm good. So don't get Cornel West. Is all I gotta say. I'll take anybody else you got coming. Just don't bring Dr. West on here. I
I
don't
was
want
about
that
to
smoke.
say, Dr.
You
West,
know.
you watch you holler at me on that Cam Glenn on Twitter. Just to mess with Richard.
All
But
right.
yeah, but no, we're gonna definitely have conversations. But yeah, we so it looks like you guys we're gonna have to pick up more on these political systems, because like we got to talking about stuff, and I definitely want to get into that dog whistle politics.
Yeah, we do need to talk
And
about
kind
that.
of, yeah, we really need to talk about dog whistle politics, because especially because I really believe that a lot of dog whistle politics is really like, set an atmosphere, the climate that we are in today, especially when we talk
Oh
about
yeah.
the Republican Party,
Oh yeah.
and also the Democratic Party too. So yeah,
Yeah.
the week after next, family, we're going to actually have that discussion. Like I said, next week we're going to have Dr. Gerard Ball on, talking about the myth and propaganda of Black buying power. This whole thing came about, because of Blackout Tuesday, and to really see like, okay, like if we do a Blackout Tuesday, how effective would that be? So we're going to definitely have that conversation next week, and then the following week after that, we're going to talk about dog whistle politics, and like I said, and we're going to possibly read some excerpts from Here to Equality, and be like, and Richard, what did we learn this week?
Well, I'm
But
looking forward to see what the guy says.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes, it's great. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the end. But before we go, we just want to thank our Patreons, Best Name Ever and Marsha Ortega. Thank you so much for contributing to YFNA News.
Thank you.
And also, if you all like the content, again, please like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel, YFNA News, hit that bell button, make sure that you get notifications. And also, if you like the content, please consider being a Patreon, so that we can make these broadcasts better, bigger, blacker, all that great stuff. And and you can definitely do that, like I said, just hitting the links towards the bottom for our Patreon, and also buy us a coffee. I like my coffee black, no sugar, no cream.
Oh
So
God.
you can definitely so you can definitely do that at the end as well. So again, everyone, thank you all so much. Thank you for having this lively discussion. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, everybody in the chat, all my family that had came in and listened and saw. I was tweeting like, please, please watch our show. So I'm glad y'all came. So appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. And on that note, have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Good night.